Thank you so much, Dean Dobson. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today, and I really appreciate the invitation from Kristen and Marjorie, and also all of the work that Anne and Diana have done to bring me here to you today virtually. So thank you all. I'm really honored to be part of this, and I will try my best to keep an eye on the chat. So and we'll have some time for questions at the end. But I look forward to this conversation. I am going to share my screen here, and you guys can then see this presentation. So I hope some of you have been to Domaine Carneros. Maybe some of you have. If you have, drop it in the chat. It would be great to know. Are you guys able to see the screen properly?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So we are located in the heart of the Napa Valley. Really, we are right at the entrance to Napa Valley. We often call ourselves the gateway of Napa Valley. And you can't miss us if you've driven past. We have a beautiful chateau that I'll show you more pictures of that is built in honor of a chateau from our owners. So we are owned by the family behind Champagne Taittinger. For those of you who have had an opportunity to try it, it's the most delicious champagne. And they have been importing their wine into the United States since 1947, the entire time with their partners, this family of Co-Brand, who you may have heard of, the Koch family behind Co-Brand. So Co-Brand is a wine distributor here in the United States, and they had a long-term partnership, and Claude Taittinger back in the day would visit the United States, represent his brand, sell his brand, and he came out to Napa Valley and fell in love with the region, and particularly the Carneros region of Napa, which I'll share more about later, and decided that someday he wanted to open a sparkling wine house here in California. And it wasn't until 1987, 40 years into their partnership, that they discovered this beautiful place right at the south end of the Napa Valley, cooler climate, beautiful rolling hills. It reminded him of the cool climate of Champagne, and they purchased the property and established Domaine Carneros. So for those of you who have driven by, I'm sure it's many of you, you can't mistake our beautiful chateau, and it is built in honor of the Chateau de la Marqueterie, which is a beautiful property that's owned by the Taittinger family in Champagne region. So a little bit of about my background. I grew up in New Jersey, and I was kind of a hippie and very into science. And so I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad. It just seemed like the right fit of a bohemian culture and a serious science school. So I went to school there, and it was a great fit. I loved it so much that I decided that I needed to stay in the Bay Area and figure out something to do in Northern California. And so I looked at different grad school programs, and I discovered that UC Davis has this program to study viticulture and enology. I didn't even know what it meant. But when I looked into it, I realized that it combined so many of my different interests, from science with chemistry and biology, agriculture. I really got into environmental science when I was there, and I knew that we could do things to enhance sustainability of vineyards in the industry. I was excited about the winemaking and the artistry behind winemaking, also the sales and marketing and the hospitality. So it was just everything I liked combined in this one career, and I thought, I'm going to do that. And so I signed up for the UC Davis Master's Program in Viticulture and Enology, graduated in 2001, which makes counting harvests really easy. I just completed my 21st harvest in the industry. So I have fallen in love with the Carneros region. My first job was as a harvest intern, working in the viticulture side of the industry, so in the grape growing side. At Saintsbury Winery, which is one of our neighbors here at Domaine Carneros. And shortly after that, a winery called Bouchain took a chance on me as a 24-year-old to hire me as their vineyard manager. I think they were excited about the idea of having somebody who they could train and really work with to do implement their vision in the vineyard. And I loved working at Bouchain. I worked there from 2002 to 2006. And it was during that time there that I realized that I wanted to work outside of just the viticultural box, and got really into hospitality and sales and other facets of the industry, and decided to go back to school and get my MBA. So I was concurrently working in an MBA program while I was working, and started working at another winery called Maryvale that has two brands, Starmont and Maryvale. Was their director of vineyard operations, and eventually they asked me to run all their hospitality, which was kind of a shock, and also really an exciting challenge, because I was always telling them, well, I think you should do this with your wine club, and what if you did this in the tasting room, and maybe we should have events like this. And so finally they just said, here, you just got your MBA, why don't you do it? And promoted me into a management role, and that was the official transition for me to get into management from the viticulture and vineyard side of the business. I worked there for a few years, and then I started my own business. I was doing a little bit of viticultural consulting when I met this man, Cliff Lady, who has a beautiful winery in the Stags Leap District and another brand called Fell, which is an Anderson Valley Pinot Noir and Chardonnay program. And he asked me to run his wineries, essentially. So initially as director of vineyard and winemaking for Cliff Lady, and then eventually became the COO. And I worked there for almost a decade, and I loved it, and I wasn't planning to leave, but all of a sudden my dream job appeared. I got a call from a recruiter about the CEO position at Domaine Carneros, and it was, just shocking and exciting, and I get to go back to Carneros. I got to work in sparkling wine, which was really exciting and something new for me, and something that's trending, and also that I personally have a love for, including and specifically the love of the Taittinger wines. So it was just the greatest fit, and I couldn't turn it down. So I said, sure, let's talk. And we actually had to put the whole conversation on hold because we were talking in March of 2020. And I approached them and I said, look, I want this job and I don't want to lose this opportunity, but I do feel obliged to help my company through at least the beginning of this, whatever this is going to be, as the pandemic. And so I also recognize that probably Domaine Carneros doesn't want to lose their leadership right at this moment. And I'll talk more about this amazing woman that used to helm Domaine Carneros in a minute. But so we all decided to put everything on hold, and we revisited the conversation again in June, July, once things were starting to reopen. And I started on the first day of harvest in 2020. No pressure, no big deal, middle of a pandemic, 2 weeks before the fire started, all sorts of things going on in the world and here locally. But it's been great because this place is awesome, and I hope you guys all have a chance to experience it at some point. And concurrent with taking this job, I also became the founding member of Chief, which is this really incredible organization nationwide. They just opened the SF Bay Area chapter, and the dedication is in advancing women into leadership positions in all industries. And for me, it's fun because the wine industry can be a little bit insular, and to work with a group of women in executive positions across all industries has been really inspiring. And I said that I was going to be monitoring the chat, but I actually can't see it while I'm also screen sharing and doing all these things. So I'll have to check in on it at the end. So I mentioned that we have this incredible founder at Domaine Carneros, and here she is, Eileen Crane, in the center. I actually met her in my first year working in the industry and was so inspired by her. She's so polished and so professional, and her wines are the best in the country. And so it's really a cool story to think about, because in 1987, the Taittinger and Kopp family, when they were looking for somebody, they actually posted a job position that said that they were looking for a young man out of UC Davis who maybe had some sparkling wine experience. And this guy, Steve Allen from Sequoia Grove, knew Eileen. She had already been the assistant winemaker at Domaine Chandon, and she built Gloria Ferrer Winery. So she already had a decade of experience in 1987. She also, her true love is champagne, and that's what inspired her to get into sparkling wine. And so the idea of working with the Tattingers was so exciting for her too. And so they just knew it was the perfect fit, and she joined in 1987. She built this beautiful chateau. She created this brand, and is a true icon and an inspiring person. And definitely has I have big shoes to follow in terms of succeeding her in her retirement. But she was here for 33 years, so really an exceptional woman. And we have these two great winemakers, and TJ Evans was our winemaker. He was hired as our Pinot Noir winemaker and has been our Pinot Noir winemaker since 2008. And Zach was hired in 2008 as an intern and slowly moved up to enologist. assistant winemaker, and now he's officially our sparkling winemaker and heads up all our production. So two great guys, really great winemakers, and like a long-term commitment to Domaine Carneros, which is really awesome. So I wanted to take a second. I heard that the program that you guys are in at Collins is 70% female, and that is awesome. And it's so cool to hear that. When I think back about my career, actually, already by the time that I went to UC Davis and studied viticulture and enology, it was about 50-50 male and female. And so while I was in school, I didn't really give that much thought to a gender disparity in the industry. Though getting out of school and choosing viticulture specifically over winemaking, I could count the number of women who worked in viticulture or who would attend the Vit Tech meetings at the university. But I still at the time felt that most of the work had been done before me, by the generation before me, by the Eileen Cranes of the world, who had basically said that, had shown the world that a woman can be as good of a winemaker or as good of a general manager, CEO as a man. And so, again, I still wasn't really giving it that much attention. But I'm going to just point a few statistics out that were taken in 2020, so just last year. So if you look at the winemaking level, when you get into the assistant winemaker level, you've got a pretty, gender equal 50-50 female male. And even women are showing a slight little bit of increase in salary over the males at that level. But what's scary is that as you move up in the winemaking positions, the percentage of women decreases, as does the compensation relative to the men. And so that's a big issue, obviously. And if you look at the CEO level at a winery, we were talking here that you've got 80% almost men and 20% women. And if you look at the average comp, it's almost double for men. So this was a big eye-opening study for me, and it reinforced my commitment to realizing that we do need to have this conversation about how not only do we get women, and not just women, but minorities interested in the industry, but then how do we also make sure that they're empowered to move up and advance in the industry. That's a really important conversation that we still have to have. So our beautiful gate showing that we're the gateway into Napa Valley. And I talked a little bit about our timeline. I'm not going to go into all of this, but we were founded again in 1987. Eileen Crane was hired by the Tattinger and the Kopp families to create this amazing place. Claude Tattinger tasked her with finding vineyard land. He said, it's so hard to buy land in Champaign. I bet Napa Valley is going to be like that in 50 years from now. So buy land. And so you'll see we purchased land, and we own 6 estate vineyards throughout the Carneros region, which is really important that we have our control over our fruit sourcing. It entails a fair amount of risk because then you're at the vagaries of the season. But for us, in terms of like a quality standpoint, we think it's really, a strong and important commitment. It also is our sustainability program that's so important to us, our ability to make sure that all the grapes that go into our program are being farmed sustainably. And we've done a lot of firsts here. So not only were we the first, wine club in the Valley. So Eileen was noticing in the early 90s that people were saying, how do I get this wine at home? And we weren't making that much. There wasn't this huge distribution yet. And so she started the wine club in 1994. She also started making our sparkling rosé and being one of the first people to do it, not by adding red wine to a sparkling wine, but by making a little bit of rosé and blending that into the sparkling wine. And that was a really unique style, and we are known for making a very elegant rosé. I talked a lot about the winemakers, and something that's really cool that we started doing about 10 years ago is open book management. So she got turned on to this philosophy by Zingerman's, which used to be just a deli in Michigan that was known for like really engaging and progressive employee programs, and also like full transparency into the financial workings of the company. And so we do that here. We have huddles every month, and we any employee can attend. They're recorded. You can watch them after. And we talk about all of the key performance metrics of the company down to the bottom line and net profit. So yeah, cool place, and we'll talk about some of that more as we go along. So that's the OG house. That's the original Chateau de la Marqueterie, and it's owned by Champagne Tanger. So it looks a fair amount like our beautiful chateau here, which is that one. So I was mentioning the emphasis that we put on our estate vineyards. All are located within just a couple miles of the chateau here, and all are sustainably farmed. And it's just so nice to be able to really control our own estate vineyards. It's a really special blessing that we have. So here's a little bit of a map, and we're located on the Carneros Highway. This is a good opportunity to talk about what Carneros is. So many of you guys might have heard of the American viticultural appellations. There are ways to divide up the winemaking regions in the country to the specificity of the region, whether it's the geography or the geology, the climate, the terroir, all those things. And so Napa and Sonoma are unique in that they're more like each other here at the southern ends of the valleys than they are to their respective northern counterparts, mainly because they have the influence of this is like the little tributary leading into the San Pablo and then the San Francisco Bay. But because of the marine influence, the cool climate, also what's called in geeky terminology, the alluvial soil, so the clay and the high clay content in the soil from having once been a riverbed itself. So Carneros is distinct for its cool climate, its breezy winds, and that's what makes it so great for growing Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which are the main varieties that are grown in Champagne. So we're known for this as a region, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and those are the ones that are in sparkling wine. And so they decided that this was the place that they wanted to have their sparkling wine house. So just more luxury vineyard shots because it's so pretty. That's our historic barn that I love. And some, flory Chardonnay shots. So this is a picture of harvest when they're ready to go. We harvest all of our fruit at night. We have a lot of people in hospitality complaining about the long hours and the difficulty serving our customers here at the winery, which has its challenges for sure as well. But whenever they're complaining, I remind them that our vineyard team spends about 2 months working all night, picking, doing pretty extreme heavy labor. But the idea is to bring the fruit really cold to the winery first thing in the morning. Then that helps us process throughout the day. But bringing the grapes cold to the winery is especially important in making sparkling wine because we really don't want a lot of extract from the skins, which can lend to bitterness and heaviness in the wine, which can be really favorable if you're making a still Chardonnay, and definitely if you're making red wine. But for sparkling, you want it to be as delicate of an extraction as possible. So the night harvesting is really super critical. So there's the team at night working hard. It's pretty fun if you've never had a chance to do it. It's a fun thing that there's like a whole underground community going on here in the wine world. So I've mentioned the focus on sustainability. For us, it's important to create the best wines we can, but obviously have a sustainable system to do it. So we have like a lot of different certifications from the Certified Sustainable from California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance, the Bay Area Green Program, Fish Friendly Farming Program, and the Napa Green Land and Winery Program. And I was involved 20 years ago in the inception of Fish Friendly Farming in the Napa Green Land, and one of the first producers at the time to help go through those programs. And what's so great about those programs is that they are really focused on the viticulture, the grape growing system versus organics, which is amazing and has its own value, but that goes across all crops. And so this is something that, Fish Friendly Farming in Napa Green addresses hillside farming, erosion, water health, how roadways and things like that in the vineyard impact the health of the land. So every year we do an assessment as part of our Certified Sustainable program and see how can we continue to push the envelope in terms of sustainability. So when we built our second facility here, you can see this what we call the carriage house, which is also our Pinot Noir facility. We built it into the earth for some natural cooling. We put at the time what was the largest solar array for any winery in the world here at 2003. And we bring in night air into the chateau to help keep it cool naturally. So we also collect all the water that falls on our property and bring it to our irrigation pond. So almost no water that falls on our property leaves the property unless we're having like a deluge like we did just a few weeks ago. Then our system gets a little overwhelmed. We also, all the water that we use to make wine is reclaimed and reused. It's treated and reused. And I mentioned the solar panel, and now we're building what's called a microgrid. And this is like the latest technology in solar that incorporates a battery that can store the energy that you generate. So instead of, in times of excess energy, giving it back to the grid, you capture it in your own battery. You can use it during peak nighttime hours, your own energy that you generated during the highest demand and highest price energy time. And if there's a power outage, which we're all getting used to those California PSPSs to prevent fires, we seamlessly transition to our batteries. So it's really, really cool technology. We recycle everything we can, from corks to packaging, inserts, all sorts of things like that. We compost all the grape waste. We divert almost 90% of our waste from the landfill. As a result, we recently won this California Green Medal in 2019 from California Sustainable Wine Growing. That was exciting to see the acknowledgement. And last year we won the Napa Climate Now Climate Champion Award. So great to see the recognition for your hard work. I mentioned a little bit about our employee engagement. This is something that we really think is important. I talked about the open book management. The transparency into our financials really helps people feel engaged to what we're doing. So every month we do a huddle. All the key performance metrics are shared with the company. We have our COVID safe version of doing this outside with masks. And we just do lots of fun things here. Basically, beyond that, from Halloween contests to offsite, team building things. But also we do a lot of onboarding. So when people join, they have to participate in a passport where they learn about all different departments. You can get like a finance 101. And once they complete that, they get an award. And then there's continuing education that they can participate, either learn more from the winemakers, learn more from the vineyard manager, learn more from our director of finance if they want to engage in learn more about finance in general, Excel from our IT director. So we've had a lot of cool programs for our continuing education. And last year we launched an internal mentorship program, which was something that I wanted to bring to the table. And initially I was thinking that we would do it with people from outside the industry and create a mentorship for them. But then I was thinking, gosh, we have like 120 to 150 employees, depending on the time of the year. There's probably people here who want some more career advice. And so people can sign up to work one-on-one with one of our management team members and have a mentorship program. And I'm sure you guys have all heard the buzzword, and it's about time that we as an industry start talking a little bit more about how to build more diversity and equity into the industry. And so this was something that we had considered getting external sources to train us, but the HR director and I decided that we wanted to address our own community, our own business, and the demographics of our team here and what we could do better. So we did a self-audit. We created our own DEI program and committee. So it was a very rewarding thing that we did, and that we're still growing. And so for us, it's also important to give back to the community. So not only do we do things like Earth Day cleanups, but we support a lot of local organizations and nonprofits in several different ways. In fact, right now on our intranet, we have a vote where the employees get to choose their top 4 charities to receive some money. So it's just kind of a cool, fun thing that we do that the employees can really feel engaged, whether it's food security for people, fire recovery, is it building more outdoor park and open space through the land trust or the vine trail or things like that, that they can really feel engaged. And that this gives us an idea of where the employees are most interested in supporting too for additional support. Sometimes we do like point of sale, like if you buy this case, then we'll donate, 5% or $5 to this cause, and it helps us choose which causes that we as a company want to participate in. And so, and then this year we brought back the Le Reve Scholarship. So Le Reve is our top wine. It's our Tête de Cuvée. It's 100% Chardonnay, made from the top vineyards. It's made in homage to the Tattinger's top wine. and it's gets great scores and is often considered to be one of the best sparkling wines in California. So it's a name that is meaningful to me too, because this is my dream job, and Le Rêve means the dream in French, and it is an emblem of Claude Tattinger's original dream to have his California sparkling wine house here. So, and now we like to help other people fulfill their dreams with the Le Rêve Scholarship Program. So we are partnering with a couple local universities and Culinary Institute to get some help to students that hopefully are going to join the wine industry. And then now, having created our own internal mentorship program, we launched a program with an organization called Batonnage, which is an organization stirring things up. Batonnage is the mixing of the lees in the barrels to create a creamier wine. That's the technical term for it in winemaking. For the organization, it means let's stir things up and talk a little bit more about equity for women and gender equity in the industry. And so we are doing a mentorship program with them that goes from January to November. And the candidate who, the recipient of the mentorship, will be an actual employee of ours, an intern, and get to work from marketing, sales, human resources, vineyards, lab, winemaking. So it's a really amazing overview. And it's something that for those of you who are graduating in December or maybe for next year, I'm assuming we'll continue with the program, that you might want to consider looking it up at Batonnage. The applications go through, I think, November 19th. I'm talking a lot, very fast. And you guys are a hospitality program, so I couldn't not talk a little bit about hospitality, which is something that we are really known for here at Domaine Carneros. And so some things that we're observing, and this started even before the pandemic, but basically we were noticing that consumers are coming to the Valley. So back in the day, they used to come and they would go what we call belly up to the bar, do a tasting at the bar, go to the next winery, do 4 or 5, maybe even 6 wineries a day, and not really fully be able to connect with the winery. And so now we're seeing that people are opting for fewer but more engaging experiences. And so as a result, we're changing our offerings to match that. So we're seeing longer visits, appointment only, more seated tastings, more educational experiences, more food and wine pairings, and that we're seeing guests really appreciate the focus on sustainability and learning what that means for the wine industry. We're also seeing a pretty strong demand for exclusivity and customization. So those are some of the sort of trends we're seeing as we host guests here at Domaine Carneros. So I was talking to a Washington Post reporter earlier this week, and she was asking if we were streamlining our options because of the labor issues that we're seeing, and just because of all the challenges that businesses have had with the supply chain. And I was like, we never simplify our lives here. We are always making our lives more complicated, but the whole end goal is to continue to push hospitality and to continue to be the leaders. So instead, we're offering more things and more options for our guests. So one of the examples is we have this wine pairing called Bubbles and Bites, and the whole concept is to highlight the versatility of sparkling wine pairing with a wide range of cuisines. So now we have that program rotating seasonally. We just completed the flavors of Mexico, and now we're moving on to Morocco. So starting just earlier this week, actually yesterday, we were doing a Moroccan-themed pairing menu. So that's really fun. It's been super popular. We do probably 10 to 20 of them a day, these food wine pairings. We also, so have you guys heard about what savoring is? When you use the knife to pop off the cork, it's a pretty dramatic and flamboyant practice. And it's supposed to date back to the days of Napoleon. And so we have a demonstration of this. It's the art of sabrage. And basically we do we talk about the history, we do a demonstration, and it's paired with some of our best sparkling wines and a bunch of really nice artisan treats, food and snacks. So that's another fun thing that we launched since the pandemic, not since the pandemic's over, so since the reopening. And we also launched what we call Ultimate Carneros, which is a really customized tasting experience. So I'm sure you guys have heard, but everybody's had to postpone their weddings and their engagements and all these special occasions, and people miss their 40th birthday parties and things like that. So we are offering this ultimate Carneros experience, and we've been having like so many people getting engaged here and celebrating these, really special moments with us. And we can really, do anything, get flowers or chocolates or all sorts of things for the guests, violinists, things like that, photographers. And then just if you come here in general, like so many wineries, when you go there, they just offer a flight, maybe 2 flights. We offer usually 5 or 6 different choices. You can not only have our sparkling wines, but you can mix it with Pinot Noir or just Pinot Noir and red wines. So that's really fun for guests to be able to really like choose, and then they can up level their experience by adding cheese plates, charcuterie plates, combo plates, salmon, caviar, all sorts of things, and reasonably priced. So I really think that we've done a great job here of attracting a really diverse clientele. When you come here and look around, you see awesome fashion. It's a great place to take photos, and a really nice, diverse crowd, which is really cool because as you go up into like richer Cabernet country and wines are like so expensive, and that, the industry in general is struggling to attract a younger audience. And I think that that's something that we do a really good job of. So hopefully you remember all this so you know what questions to ask me, because we're approaching that soon. So I just wanted to show you like these, more pretty pictures of this beautiful place. That was the Asian themed bubbles and bites that we did. And this one was the Mexican one with scallop crudo. It was a crab and corn esquite, a chicken tinga tostada, lamb mole, and a beautiful, it's just like doesn't look so great, but it's like this most amazing corn husk meringue, which is really good with a little corn pudding with it. And this is our Jardin d'Hiver, our winter garden, the beautiful glass house. This was built in 2018, and it just really completed the chateau, and it's just a beautiful place. And that's the room where we do most of our luxury experiences, our elevated experiences. So you can see how pretty the room is, the views of the valley. So I thought, since you're all in school, and that's such an exciting time and a little time, that I'd share just some things that I think are good if you want to get into the wine business or really any business. But internships or stages, I'm sure many of you have done a lot of them, but that's great, the stage in the restaurant or working a harvest. The program I told you is even more significant, where you get to experience things like HR and marketing and vineyards and lab and winemaking. So that notch, check it out. And also, if you really are focused more on hospitality, it's really great to get the tasting room positions. Those tend to be seasonal also, especially for entry level. The winter's pretty slow, but picks up in the spring, and definitely in the summer and fall is probably the most significant in terms of tasting room. And I always think it's important to seek out mentors. So I know you have some incredible people on your staff, maybe some people on the board that you should ask to have treat them to coffee and pick their brain, share where you're at in your career, what you're interested in, and they can give you advice about how to achieve your goals. And I think that that's really important. And another thing that's really important is choosing to work places that align with your priorities, not being overly the millennial stereotype, everything's about me, but it really kind of is in a way, in the sense that if you're working someplace that you don't believe in the philosophies of the business, whether it, and most businesses that strive for excellence, that strive for sustainability, that are progressive about caring for their employees, I'm sure those are things that you care about, and that you'll feel comfortable working for a company like that. And when they don't, though, that doesn't feel great, and you'll know that. And it's also important, you might work for a great company, but there's just really no room to grow. So you get what you needed from there, but now it's time to move on. And hopefully that company is supportive of that, and they recognize, yeah, you're probably not going to be the winemaker here, because we've got these winemakers and they're probably going to spend a large part of their career here. But you did a great job as our enologist and doing a lot science, and we're going to help you, advance in your career. And that again kind of goes back to that mentorship. So maybe that winemaker was your mentor, and while they're sad to see you go, they're also really excited for you in your career and your advancement. So we talked about some of the philosophies that you want to look for in terms of diversity, sustainability, a place that cares about the quality of what they do, doesn't cut corners all the time, and where there's opportunity for growth. And just always, work as hard as you can to be excellent. Like that's the most important thing. Always go above and beyond. And for me, that's what helped me transition from working in the field and working in viticulture, which I did love and I missed to some degree some days. But I always knew that my true skill set was more in management and like inter-team development. And so I would always say, oh, I'll help review the website if you're changing that. I'll host the group of distributor folks from Michigan and show them around the property. Oh, I'll go to Colorado and pour wine at the trade tasting. I'd love to do that winemaker dinner. And so all of a sudden I got into sales and marketing by volunteering to help out in those areas, got an opportunity to learn about them. And you have to do it in a way that doesn't step on other people's toes, or unless they really, really need to be stepped on. But you try to do it respectfully and helpfully, and hopefully that people will recognize that and they'll see your talent, and that there'll be more opportunities. So that goes into the sense of curiosity. And then once you've done that, so not this sense of entitlement, but like actually truly knowing that you're contributing, you're doing your job the best you can, you're willing to help out, go above and beyond, then know that you're valuable, and know your worth, and feel confident that you can advocate for yourself, and you have your review, and you say, not only did I do all the things that you asked me to do, but I went above and beyond. Do you remember when I changed this protocol, or I streamlined this activity, or I saved us money by doing this? Know your accomplishments and be confident in sharing them, because in the end, you'll have these mentors and they'll advocate for you, but no one's going to be as good of an advocate as you are for yourself. And that's something really important. But again, you have to do the work, you have to put in the time, you have to be great to be able to ask for the right title, ask for the right compensation, and things like that. And hopefully you'll enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. Working in hospitality can be so rewarding in so many ways. The wine industry, restaurant industry, hotels, we're bringing pleasure to people, and that's awesome and super rewarding. But it also can be difficult and challenging. So you have to know that you really love it, so that that it's sustainable for you. So come visit. It's very pretty here. And thank you guys for your time. I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can look at the chat, and also stop chatting for a second so you guys can talk and ask me questions.
Thank you so much. We'd love to open it up to questions. Because we're a large group, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature to ask, or you can put your question in the chat, and we'll alternate between coming off mute and questions in the chat. I think Sean.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Remi Cohen. My question is, as a CEO of a winery, what are some of the challenges that you face that would be different from a restaurant, a CEO of a restaurant or CEO of a hotel?
I would say probably the biggest difference, because I would think that in some ways we have a lot of similar challenges, is the having to deal with seasons and vintages and weather. Restaurants have that to some degree, like can we seat on the patio or can we not seat on the patio, which we, in fact, we're dealing with just very today. There's guests sitting right there. We don't, we're so subjected to Mother Nature, from things like fire damaging all of the crop. In recent years, drought has been crazy. So, and it's funny because I started a year ago and I was like, oh my God, we have so much wine. Like, when are we even going to sell all this wine? Like, I guess we'll catch up eventually. But 2018, 2019 were huge vintages, especially being like in a state-driven program where you get what you get from your property. We had these huge vintages, and then in 2020 and 2021, which were significant drought years, we've had really limited vintages and limited quantity of wine coming in. And so now we have to figure out how to manage that. How do you keep the supply chain moving And then I guess that would lead to another, to another different, Sean, which is that we have so many channels, and sometimes restaurants do too, where they have takeout and they have some sort of online business, or they have a retail store or shop, or things like that. But for us, we're selling, so I have a wine club, so like a membership subscription type thing. We've got a visitation, so people come here and they taste. So that's kind of like almost similar to a restaurant. We have a big e-commerce program, so that's significant. And then we manage distribution throughout, the US and export. And so I would say that's probably like the other, big difference in terms of wine versus hotel and restaurant.
Thanks, Sean. Ellis?
Oh, thank you. My question is, how would you suggest somebody who doesn't maybe geographically live near a vineyard or winery get into the wine industry?
So it's interesting. I just met this woman. She's participating in an organization called the Roots Fund, which is specifically focused on the BIPOC community and getting them more engaged. And she lives in Baltimore, and she has a mentor out here. So they're giving her some funding so she can come out here more regularly. Obviously, that's not like the case for every single person that can do that, but looking for those types of like scholarship programs that will help fund that travel component if you are living remotely. And then there's wine bars. There's wine education programs. So like all across the country, you can participate in like I think they call it WSET learning programs. So you can learn more about wine through that. Going on like a somm tract in a restaurant often gets you there because you're like the person who is helping serve the wine on the restaurant floor and learning more and more. And maybe you're working for a wine focused restaurant that has a nice cellar and a good somm that is really knowledgeable. And then you're learning from that person. And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm really into this. Now I'm like going to France to learn, or I'm going to Napa to learn. And so you can, work in like a somm driven restaurant program.
Thank you.
Allison?
Hello, great presentation. Sorry if I'm out of breath, I'm walking up the hill currently. But just on a personal note, what is your favorite product that you sell and what do you like pairing it with?
Well, I mean, I like everything for different reasons. So it's hard to pick just one thing. But probably just like what's the most approachable and the most versatile is our brew. Which you can find the white label version of that at a restaurant. And here we sell a slightly different version of it with a blue label. It's like just a great 50-50 Chard Pinot sparkler. Has just like a hint of sweetness like that you don't really detect. That's why it's called a brut. So it tastes dry, but it has just like the right amount of sweetness to bring out the flavors with the high acidity in the wine. And it really pairs with almost everything from like oysters to like triple cream cheeses. A lot of people like fried foods with sparkling wines, like fried chicken is really great. Like potato chips with creme fraiche and caviar if you're kind of going like more bougie baller style. So yeah, just kind of like it can really pair with everything. It's the one when we do the Bubbles and Bites, the art of sparkling wine pairing, we tell people try this with more different things because you'll see how like the flavors complement and change each other. So it's pretty fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rainey?
Hi. In your presentation, you shared with us how you give back to local communities through philanthropy. I was wondering if you did that on a national scale as well.
So it gets a lot harder when you start doing things on the national distribution scale. They actually changed the rules during the pandemic because what's challenging is that you can't provide things of value or like incentivize purchases of alcohol. So the national scale, gets a little bit more challenging with all the rules. There's things called like Tide House rules and things like that. I think that they changed it a little bit during the pandemic because people were saying, I want to donate $5 for every bottle sold to pandemic relief or restaurant workers or industries that were most impacted. And people were finding a lot of legal challenges behind doing that. For us, so much of our business is direct to consumer that we were able to do stuff like order this pack and we're going to donate something to No Kid Hungry or, Feeding America or, some of the fire relief funds. And then, we did some of our own charitable donations. Actually, this was cool. We just did, we did a member survey because we're thinking about changing some of the benefits of our membership and trying to give benefits to people who can't just come here all the time. So we did it said the survey said something like a cup of coffee for your time. And at the end of fulfilling the survey, they can choose to get a $5 Pete's gift card, or they can donate $5 to either the Napa Valley Farm Worker Foundation or Feeding America. And it was so cool that almost everybody chose the donation, and we were able to give significant donations to both of those organizations. So just stuff like that. That's just a little easier when on the direct to consumer front for us to do it. It's been more challenging, and there's an extra layer to it, which is because we're owned by co-brand does all our distribution. And while it can be collaborative, it's also that's what they do. And then we work with them, but we're not really in direct control of the distribution. So that for us specifically adds another layer of challenge rolling out national programs. Plus every state has a different rule. So it's very hard to do anything across all the states. Some state it's not going to work or that kind of thing.
We have a question in the chat from William. What are some wine trends that you found successful in 2021, especially with wine bars?
So what's great for us at Domaine Carneros is that bubbles are big. So we're seeing that in general, wine is trending pretty strong, and people were buying a lot of wine in retail during the shutdowns. And people are still buying more wine in retail than they were in 2019, but not quite as much as the restaurants are opening, but more. So now that as the restaurants are opening, we're seeing these really great sales across many wineries, but sparkling wine is outperforming still wine, which is cool. And more producers are taking the chance to make sparkling wine because it is so complicated, and to make really truly great sparkling wine takes a long time. And rosé is really strong too. So for us making our sparkling rosé, it's kind of oh, not only do you have rosé, but you have bubbles all in one wine. So that's super popular. And then I would say, one other thing is, as people are so health, more health conscious these days, our Ultra Brut, which when I was asked about my favorite wine, this is actually one of my favorites also, is a lower dosage, slightly less sweet. So it's dry and more mineral driven, and it can be perceived as austere, especially on its own. But when paired with certain shellfish and things like that, it's a really great pairing. So the drier, in the champagne world called Brut Nature or zero dosage, that is also trending specifically in the sparkling world, lower, less sweetness.
Thank you. We have about 2 more questions, and then we will wrap up for today. How are wineries preparing for the effects of global warming?
So I can't speak to everybody, but I do know that Napa in general is pretty progressive in terms of wanting to protect itself and the environment. And there's a lot of things that we can do, and there's so many different levels of that. There's dealing with what you already have. So you've got these vineyards, and you have to make sure that they're planted with drought tolerant rootstocks. That you are, recycling your water, that you're using as little water to irrigate as you possibly need to get the quality of the fruit, that you're trellising in a way that's protecting the fruit from the heat of the afternoon sun. Those are some viticultural things. People are starting to talk about using lighter bottles, which is challenging with sparkling wine because you need, a sturdy bottle, but we are also experimenting with an eco glass, a lighter glass. For shipping, because lighter shipping means less fuel. other things in terms of fuel and energy use, if you can not make as many tractor passes and diesel passes, looking at electronic tractors. For us, using renewable energy, going to the microgrid, expanding on our existing solar panels. That's a big, a big financial commitment that we're putting forward, and we're betting on, the return on that. And, so, I mean, those are just some examples, but it's really like you have to look at the whole supply chain, from like shipping logistics to packaging materials, farming. There's so many different aspects, and if I'm really impressed with Jackson family, like Kendall Jackson, but now they're Jackson Family Wines. They're doing a series with this woman, Elaine Brown, who's amazing, and it's called Rooted for Good, and they're posting the videos on YouTube. So Jackson Rooted for Good, and you can learn about, there was one on regenerative agriculture, there's one on water, so there's a few different, more general sustainability what that means, and what their goals, they're setting goals for 2030 to accomplish, so you can see what like a really like well-funded and large organization is doing, to move the industry forward.
We have a question from Lewis with his hand raised.
Yeah, hi, thanks for coming. So my question is, like, how much did you go into the science of like learning the soil and like growing grapes on the grapevine? And like, does a wine grower manage the process of growing the grapes on the vines to actually making wine?
Yeah, I mean, I dug deep into viticulture because I was really more interested in plant biology and being outside and the dynamics between plants and the soil, microbes and mycorrhizae and things like that. That was like, really exciting and inspiring for me. I don't think you have to go that deep into it if you want to make great wine, but it will help. So it's definitely something that, and it also helps you sell wine. I think like the somms that are, really distinguishing themselves as the best, not only have, like, to be a really good somm, you have to do a few things, right? So you have to know a lot of wine. So you need to know the history and the places, where all the different wine comes from. Then you need to be able to like correlate that to like a sensory experience and be able to log that and be like, oh, this is like Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara. I think this is like maybe about 10 years old. I'm going with like, 2010 Stanford Pinot, like that kind of thing. And then, then you have to think, to be able to put those two things together, you have to really understand like, what's the climate like in Santa Barbara for growing Pinot Noir? Who's growing Pinot Noir in Santa Barbara and what are they doing? Are they being edgy and progressive? And is there a trend down there to go rich and ripe, or is there a trend to go, like more austere? So you have to like, it's like history, it's geology, it's geography, it's climatology, and then it's the sensory thing. And then somehow you need to be able to like translate that to a person when they come in the restaurant and have it not be so overwhelming that you're like, oh, like the lime content in this soil is what, brings out the minerality in this wine, and, like not be too intimidating unless they're excited to geek out with you on that. So to be able to be like, oh, if you like that Chardonnay, I think you'll like this Chardonnay. And then they'll be like, why do you think I like that Chardonnay? Oh, that Chardonnay happens to be high acid or high mineral or whatever style that they present. I don't know if I answered your question.
And we'll end with one last question from Brittany.
Hi, and thank you so much for coming, Remi, and talking to us. My question is, as a CEO, how involved are you in the harvesting process? And if you're pretty involved, what do you find to be the most challenging during harvest time?
So I would say that I only spend probably like 15% of my time on viticulture related things, 15% on winemaking, maybe 15% on like, I don't know, making sure this adds up correctly, 15% on like national sales and export, 15% on like the DTC experience, and then the rest on people. I don't get like too nitty gritty into like the operations of the vineyard. I have a vineyard manager who is amazing. He's been in the industry for almost 40 years. He's been here since 2012. And then he has like 3 main supervisors, one of whom, runs the harvest. But I would say just keeping everybody safe, you know, keeping everybody like supported, especially in like the last 2 years, you know, with just the stresses of the pandemic and the fear around the pandemic. You know, we decided to not bring in a lot of external labor, which put like more stress on our own team and our own crews, and we moved people from department to department. But in the end, I think the lesson learned from that was really valuable, because we realized that we don't need to lay off the vineyard team at the end of the fall season. They can go and start working in shipping and or in the disgorging line. And so we like moving people from you know, from one role to another, which they enjoy, and has given them like an eye-opening experience into like, oh, maybe there's a way to advance in this other part of the industry. So yeah, safety, people, and then, you know, there's always wine quality concerns and timing and logistics and all those things with the harvest. But for us, harvest is like full on for everybody, because it's not only like the vineyard, then there's also the winemaking, and then that's like the busiest season for guests too. So it's just like a full on time here, but it's fun. It's like what we work all year for. So it's actually an exciting time, and we try to like feed the employees and you know, provide food and just try to keep an eye on each other and make sure everyone's you know, safe and getting at least you know, enough rest.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Remi, for sharing your insight and your wisdom with us for this year's Frank Lectureship Series. Really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.